full of it and then call the equipment manager over as I watched him tape his stick with colored tape. And the equipment manager's like, no, man, they can't do that. So I'm not going to name names, but yeah,
it does happen. And I'm surprised at it, but that's a great point by you.
I remember back in the 70s, a lot of goalies would literally put a full roll of black tape on the knob. And I don't mean the Braden Holtby 1,000 wraps, but I mean literally put the roll over the top of the stick and then tape it into it with black tape. And it was absurd. I think the idea they said was to make it easier to pick the stick up easier. But you can see where that confusion would have happened in the past. But yeah, I agree with you, Woody. Let's get rid of it. It's kind of cool, though, just to have that knob that's all one color and then that little wrap of white. And people say, are you just a crazy goalie here? No, it's actually because of the rules.
There you go.
Yeah, a statement.
Turning a problem
it's a
into
statement.
an opportunity.
I like it because it's sticking it to the man in a way. But we want people to be officials too, so we don't need them to be sticking it to the man. I'm contradicting myself all over the place. So let's slide over to the NHL Sense Arena feature interview. The parent segment is connected great to the NHL Sense Arena feature interview because Josh Tucker was part of the parent segment last week with True Focus Vision. Josh Tucker talked about how it's great to have your goaltender have their eyes checked. And now we're going to meet him this week, brought to you by NHL Sense Arena.
Gentlemen, have you ever dreamt of having your own rink at your house? Not just a backyard rink, but one that you can use all year long because you're obsessed with goaltending. I mean, I'd like that. I'd like to have my own Zamboni I can drive around in the basement as well. But maybe you wish you could invite a bunch of your buddies over who happen to play in the NHL to shoot on you anytime you want, even if their team's on a road trip. Now imagine adding to that a coach who can give you training plans to follow, diagnostic tools to let you know how you're developing as a goalie, even tools that give you instant feedback on how your position is filling the space in the net. Oh, and you should probably add in your own off-ice trainer to give you eye-hand drills and neurocognitive training. Well, you can actually do that now. It's not a dream. In the VR world, at least, it's not. Go grab the MetaQuest headset, head over to the MetaQuest store, get a monthly, annual, even a game pass to just give it a go. And NHL Sense Arena will give you all of that in the virtual world and so much more. It's NHL Sense Arena. Really, guys, it's the number one tool for training as a goaltender away from the rink. We love it. NHL goalies love it. And you will too. SenseArena.com. Learn more today.
I thought you were going to buy me a rink and do all that stuff for me, but that's way more convenient to put on the headset.
It's a little more convenient. And then you can take your rink and you can put it in your bag and go to Hawaii with it today.
Like Woody.
Are you suggesting that I take Sense Arena to Hawaii for some photo opportunities and we run a summer contest that we've talked about for 3 years and never done? Maybe sounds like we should.
I'd like you to be actually surfing wearing the headset making saves.
I think you've never surfed before or seen my relative level of surfing because that would be tough. I would inevitably soak the headset and I'm not sure it's waterproof. That said, there's pretty much nowhere you can't take it. We heard Devin Cooley on, remember our interview with him? He was talking about he's going sailing with his dad and that he wants to bring it. I think they're going to the Mediterranean. His dad's a big sailor. And so his intention is to get us some images of him using Sense Arena in the Mediterranean on a sailboat. That would be very cool. Let's go to Josh Tucker. Speaking of being able to see the game through a headset, Josh has lots of different tools that will help you see the game better in terms of how your vision works. I don't want to give away this interview, but there's so much more to it. There's a lot of takeaways, a lot of tips. Going back to the parent segment last week, what is the first thing we should do when it comes to improving our young goalies' vision? We get into that again. And just, for those who are unfamiliar, Josh has run True Focus Vision in Minnesota for 18 years now. He's worked with more than 30 NHL goalies and 12 NHL teams during that time. He's written for us. There's a great Jeremy Swayman ball drop drill that he produced for us after we saw Swayman doing this exercise to get his eye-hands coordination going before a game recently. We've got more of that stuff coming with Jake Ottinger, who happens to be one of his clients as well. I remember walking into the Dallas Stars locker room this season and seeing that True Focus Vision symbol, which is like an eyeball with flexing biceps out either side. I'm like, I recognize that logo. And Jake Ottinger opened up the bag and showed me all the goodies that he's using. I go back to the Braden Holtby line. Like, as a goalie, the most important muscle I have is the muscles that control my eyes. So why wouldn't I exercise and warm them up and train them the same way I would my hands or my legs? And so Josh is a guy that does that like nobody else. And we wanted to give a chance for everybody to get to know him, the work he does, and along the way, share some tips and advice for goalies, goalie parents, and yes, even goalie coaches. Really excited to be joined on the In Goal Radio podcast. Got to admit, bit of a shocker that we haven't had you on before. I actually had to look because I just assumed we'd had talked in this format. Josh Tucker, visual performance specialist. We're here at True Focus Vision in Minnesota. One of the benefits of me coming to the USA Hockey National Goaltending Symposium was getting to connect with you because it's in your hometown. You were there at the expo. We connected. Now meeting a few days later. I feel like you and I have talked so much over the years that I struggle to know where to start sometimes. So let's start. I've introduced you in articles in the past. I'm looking around your office. I'm looking at all the goalies you work. You don't like to brag. You don't like to talk about the names. But folks, this is like a who's who of NHL guys that I'm looking at. What does Josh Tucker, vision specialist, do for athletes and beyond? Let's start there with what the job is and what True Focus Vision does. I'm throwing the biggest picture at you right out of the gate.
Yes. So easiest way to grasp this is to first understand the visual system can be trained and improved. And the discipline was created initially to help kids with reading issues. And I'd love to revisit that when you feel the time is right. In those early days, kids were improving at reading, and they also, mom and dad were coming in like, hey, Johnny's finally able to catch a fly ball, hit a ball. And so they said, hey, there's athletic benefits to this too. So we work with both. And on the sports side, my background, I'm a former goalie myself. I coached between private lessons and coaching high school hockey here in Minnesota for a collective 20 years. So the position's been a big part of my life. And so we work with lots of different athletes, but with goalies, it's kind of our sweet spot. And so what we do for them is, I'd say, it's a combination. The eye-hand training is a big part of it. And that's it makes the best posts. It's the coolest looking stuff. I calculated it's less than 10% of my annual hours of how we help people. The main thing we do is we test and quantify a number of dynamic visual skills. So we're not the ones that look at whether or not you need glasses, but how the eyes work as a team, how they move, things like that. And then our program systematically brings them all to an elite level. And one of the cool things is it's more akin to muscle memory than it is strength or muscle growth. So once you invest the time into going through the full program, with pretty minimal maintenance, it should benefit you for the rest of your career. I mean, eventually time is undefeated. You get older, things get harder.
Raise his hand.
Yeah.
Talks about bifocal contact lenses being the last frontier. It's tough.
You need a selfie stick to hold your phone far enough away to read it.
Exactly.
And concussions can do a number on the visual system. And some people just have visual issues that are more prone to regression. But for the most part, I mean, I've got a couple goalies in the NHL right now who I trained when they were kids, and I have them in once a summer just to double check, and they're still right where we left them, score wise.
Okay. So, you've been doing this 19 years in the field.
Yep.
14 years with True Focus Vision.
Yep.
I was trying to think because I've seen this, right? I've seen it. We met way back at one of the early Net 360 camps. You and Chelsea Layden came in and walked all the athletes through it, did the testing, sort of went through how their eyes perform different tasks, convergence, divergence, and worked with them on tools to get better. And that's sort of the snapshot I had originally. Maybe we can share that snapshot with everyone else. And we'll get to the reading stuff too, because at the end of the day, this is about more than just athletes.
Yeah.
Josh has shared some examples and things with me of just how this can change lives of kids that struggle to read and just think they're not smart enough. And it turns out their eyes just don't work in a way that allows them to read like most of us assume is normal.
Right.
But I want to start with the athlete. So first thing you would do, I guess, we'll spawn this into a parent segment.
Yeah.
What would be the first thing you tell a parent to do with their young goaltender?
Get an eye exam now.
Now, folks, you heard that now part, right? That was important. Now, get an eye exam.
Now, I want to distinguish, school screenings, they'll catch big outliers, team wellness checks. But I mean, I know optometrists who are hired to screen NFL teams. They get 60 seconds a guy. It's not enough time to look at everything, right? Where get an optometric eye exam. Insurance should cover it. It should take about 20 minutes. I have had so many people over my years of doing this. For one anecdote, I went to a high-end goalie camp where these are some of the best teenage goalies in the country. I surveyed of 40 of them. I said, not counting school screenings, not counting wellness checks, how many of you have actually been to an eye doctor to get your eyes checked? 16 out of 40 raised their hands. Less than half of the highest projected performers. So from the neck down, they've all logged thousands of hours training the rest of their body. They didn't even do the step one most basic thing. And then as the years go by, I run into these people, coaches, players that they come up to me. Just recently was another one. I was at a camp and this kid came in and he said, hey, I met you 2 years ago at so-and-so camp. And I remembered him. And he said, I went right to the eye doctor when I got back and I needed contacts. And I said, what do you think? How is it since you wear them? He goes, it's so much better. And just, it's so no matter where I speak or present, I like to start with that. So I appreciate you asking. And that's something, telling the world to go do that has no bearing on my business. It's just the right thing to do. It's just, find out. It would be a huge bummer that your career comes to an end and you find out after you could have just put something in your eye and been better, just instantly better. So that's step one.
Okay. So go see an optometrist now. Okay. Now that said, beyond that too, there are other examples that you give me, where, and I think there's probably parents listening. They're like, oh, my kid can see fine. He doesn't need glasses. He doesn't need to go see the eye doctor. Yeah. You've seen it over the years where the parent's shocked to find out a kid, whether it's the optometrist or some of the work you do, at how the eyes aren't working, or a kid is having to compensate for a vision problem. And in their eyes, though, they don't know there's a problem because that's their normal.
Yes.
They just assume, maybe share an example, because I think there's parents that are like, my kid's fine.
Yeah.
And you just don't know because they don't say anything to you because they're assuming you're going through the same thing. That's their normal. That's what they've grown up with.
Right. Yeah. So how children perceive the world through their own eyes, that's the only way they've ever seen it. They don't know, they don't have anything with which to compare it. So I say, let's say you just grew up in a house, you never left the house, and you had an old, tube television. And you're like, yeah, TV's great. And then finally you go to a friend's house and he's got 4K HD and you're like, what? I didn't know it could look like this. So when we've had, and we're not just talking minor things. I had a 10-year-old come in. I had a 10-year-old come in, and within 90 seconds, I knew he was seeing double. And started asking him, do you ever see two of the same thing? He goes, oh, all the time. And his dad just hit his jaw at the ground. And he just didn't know. And when we have those moments in here, it's verbatim. It's the same words in the same order. The parents say, my child never complained about anything, so we didn't think anything was wrong, which I totally understand. But the thing is, kids won't complain or know that something's wrong because they don't know the alternative or how much better it could be. And so that's why I just say, now a standard eye exam is not going to check all the things that we delve into in our work, but it's really important. It's a starting point. And if you skip it and, you might go in and you're better than 20/20, great. But, if you need corrective lenses, get them, just do it. And it's just such a simple, quick thing. And again, going back to not just the player, but the parents, man, one weekend trip to a tournament is days and hours and this, and it's just, this is a quick visit and, just get the information.
Okay. All right. So we've covered optometrists. Now, once they come see you, once they want to maybe take another step, they got their vision dialed in, they know what they need or don't need.
Yeah.
The next step in terms of sports vision or fine tuning. And I know, again, you can find things that need corrected just for everyday vision. And we talk about reading.
but on the sports side,
Sure.
when we see at the light board, which you went over with me, I've seen you work on that with NHL guys.